What's up, everybody? This is Captain RL, Northeast Florida, Southeast Georgia. We're going to do the marine forecast and the fishing forecast for this weekend, 11/16/19, Saturday. And it's around lunchtime because I'm hungry. But as far as the fishing goes, it's 50 degrees outside. Real feels around 40, 41, 42, something like that. Water temperature, mid-60s, and dropping fast, by the way. A few more nights of this stuff, and it's going to be not good. Not good at all. But coming off the moon, we're going to have a foot of additional tidal influence this week because of the moon, number one, northeast winds pushing in water, number two, and number three, we got a couple inches of rainwater on top of all that. That'll level itself out pretty quick. But all the runoff from the banks had a lot of heavy rain at low tide. That runs the mud off the banks into the damn river. So all that's a problem. And everybody I know, most people are off on the weekends. You got to fish when you can fish, and I get that. Barometers all over the place. It's been high and it's been low. There's 2, 3 little weird fronts been around us, stalling, backing up. It's crazy. This weather's nuts. I mean, this is February stuff. But the good thing is, it looks like the window of opportunity is coming. And it looks like we've got like 50s and high 60s. 50s for lows, high 60s for highs, close to 70. A good bit next week. So we're going to get on the water. We're not going to fish any bait. We're going to fish all artificials. Number one, the Holy Jolie. That's the main thing we'll fish. And several other matrix shads, the Holy Jolie being the Holy Grail. But it doesn't show up good in very stained water. So we might have to switch over to a Yum mud minnow, probably root beer colored. We might throw some standard jigs, some flat tails. Let's see what else I got. We'll throw some DOA cows, stuffed shads. Yeah, we're just going to try a variety of stuff. And we'll have to fish slow because of the cool down, even though trout like that, 65-degree water. But it dropped pretty quick. So we'll probably target structure, bottom of the tide, top of the tide. As long as there's moving water, we'll be happy as long as it's not running too hard. Coming off the moon, it should be slowing down. We're looking for a coefficient, is what it's called. Coefficient is the speed of the tide between moons. And it's every day. It's not just between moons, but coefficients get really high around moon tides, new moon especially. So a normal coefficient number that would be good here, you'd find on a 6.5 to 7.2 foot tide, which is around 60, 55 to 65, let's say. When the coefficient gets up to around 70, you're starting to get into a little bit murkier water that it's causing because of that extra few inches of water it has to run. During a 6-hour period, because it's going to do it in 6 hours one way or the other. Sometimes it does go past that when it's a really big tide. It does go past 6 hours, but it's got to move that water. So it's muddying things up the bigger the tide is. So like an 8-foot tide, which is pretty damn normal around here in northeast Florida, southeast Georgia, whole Georgia coast. If you get it, say, an 8 or an 8.2, the coefficient's going to be in the high 80s, the coefficient number. Okay, for example, if it gets up to 8.5 and 8.7, 8.8, pushing that 9-foot mark, the coefficient's over 100. And we had some of our best redfish days when the coefficient was 108. That's a 9.1, 9.2 foot tide is when you see coefficients like that. So that's pushing in here 2 or 3 more foot of water than a 50-55 coefficient level. And it makes for good fishing on top of tides and on the bottom of tides for some species. Trout really have to see a bait though. That's the difference. Catching reds, they're coming to it by smell mostly, the way we fish for them in deep water. Unless you put a jig in their face. Redfish, they can see, but they can't see like trout can. Trout are sight feeders and opportunistic feeders. Redfish are just bottom feeding predators mainly. And that's why most people want to use bait for bull reds, the bigger reds in deep water, because it's almost too much trouble to jig in water that has less than 6 inches of visibility. It's hard to fish a jig in that and 3 knots of current and be efficient. Although it can be done if the redfish are schooled up and you're on top of them. But trout's a different deal, you know. So structure is what we'll be targeting when we go back into this, coming off of all this messy weather. So next week, Monday or Tuesday, probably Monday afternoon, we'll let the sun warm up the banks a little bit and warm the top layer of the water up just to shade, and we'll target medium depth water structure, 8 to 14 feet, maybe 15 feet with jigs. And depending on the watercolor, again, probably gonna be a little too muddy and stained to use the Holy Jolie matrix, but we'll probably use, again, the young mud minnows and root beer, jigging very slow, 1/16 or 1/8 ounce jig head. That's why there can't be too much current, because that's a light jig head. But the lighter the jig head is, the better action you're gonna get off of that jig as far as the way it swims. So, but we do need current to catch trout. Don't have to have a lot, but we need some kind of current. And most of the time we won't go that low on the weight of the jig head. I don't like going really to 1/8. A quarter is kind of the all-around thing. A 3/8 in heavy current, when you need it to go deep, need it to go fast. But jerk jigging for trout, you're right over the fish, right? You're standing on the bow, wherever it is that the structure's right below you that you're fishing. You want that shad or that jig you're using to land, and you don't want them just to land and fall over. You want them to land and stand up for a second, and he lays down nice and slow. We can show you that effect in the pool, which we have a video for that. We just got to edit it. And but the lighter your jig head is, the longer the time is it takes him to fall. And the longer it takes him to fall, the better chance you'll get a bite. Because when you're jigging like this, it's called vertical jigging, jerk jigging, whatever you want to call it, over the side of the boat, right, straight up and down with the structure you're targeting. You want to go with as light as you can, because as you guys know that fish jigs, you don't feel the bite usually when you're on the upswing, unless you've just come from a downswing. So in other words, they hit the jig on the way down. On the upswing, that's just another way to get the jig up. That gets their attention. They may see it go by, and then they're going to watch it. But when it comes back down, it's important how that jig lands on the bottom. So that's where you got to think, okay, screw tails, they fall over. Are we going to use a paddle tail? Probably, because a paddle tail, like a DOA cow is actually a good example, because when they land on a lightweight jig head like an 1/8 or a 1/16 ounce jig head, they stand up for a while. They lay down real slow. It's real natural. And then one pop of the rod, we usually bump, let it go back down. And on a lightweight jig head, again, it's sinking very slow. They like that, because you're getting all the movement out of that jig you can get. On a 3/8 ounce jig head, in the same situation, it just goes straight to the bottom. So the jig's got no time to give out action. Okay? And so a little current helps too, especially on a shad jig, or cocoa hoe, paddle tail, whatever you want to call them, because the current also helps with the spin of that tail and the natural wobble of that shad jig. So lighter the better. But we'll give a report on it next week. Until then, I hope you understood the science on that. And if you didn't, just let me know. And you guys try to stay warm this weekend, and we'll see you Monday or Tuesday. Fish on.